I'm Jim Check.
And I'm Renee Merrifield.
And here we are with Beyond the Ballot, another episode. And the big theme today, why are things not better with all this record spending? We're spending money like drunken sailors in both the federal and provincial governments, and yet things don't look like they're getting much better. But we're spending a lot of money, and it sounds like we're going to spend a lot more. But let's listen to Francois Philippe Champagne first, and then we'll get some comment from you here. Let's roll it on Francois Philippe Champagne, our finance minister.
Mr. Speaker, it's a great question, and indeed, we're going to present a great budget in this House on the 4th of November, Mr. Speaker. This is going to be a generational investment in our future. We're going to build this country, Mr. Speaker. We're going to protect our communities. We're going to empower Canadians. We're going to build the strongest economy in the G7. We're going to build this country like never before. We're going to build the Canada of the 21st century. Mr. Speaker, we are the true north, strong and free.
Full credit for passion, not so much for delivery.
He definitely practiced that one. That one was one that he went into the House knowing he was going to speak and knowing how he was going to deliver it. He's definitely on his talking points. He's got the build. We're going to build a strong economy. We're going to build a great, a great future. We're going to build. So he's definitely on his speaking points. I just think this is too little, too late. I think that November for a budget to come out when they've had at that time it'll be almost 9 months to deliver some meaningful change and some meaningful vision. I think is just too late. The 5 projects that are being fast tracked are absolutely a drop in the bucket. They're mere lip service. Essentially, most of those projects are already underway. So they're not projects that are that have hit the skids and are simply not moving forward. So for this government to now say that they're going to have an exceptional budget is I think a little too late. The issue, though, that I think they're going to have, and I think that we'll start seeing this telegraphed, is that in this building for generations, I think they are going to be in debt for generations to come. And I think that that's going to be the Achilles heel. If they think that they can underestimate Pierre Poilievre and how he can take that and utilize that, in attack, I think that they have definitely underestimated their opponent on that.
I mean, as an accountant, I think one of the things that I think they're going to try to do is separate. You hear operational and capital budget, which is typically the government gives a budget, which is everything's in that budget. Now they're going to say, well, no, that's the operational budget, which has always been like that. But they're going to try and separate that and have the media focus on operational budget as the true deficit as opposed to the capital budget. And try to run a little smoke and mirrors there. But, there's talk out there that this thing is over $100 billion in deficit. And remember, Freeland quit when it was $62 billion. And she said that she couldn't put this forward to the Canadian public because it would just drive inflation and it's not responsible. And here it is, they're likely going to get close to double it. And here she's leaving again.
Yeah, I find it really interesting that she's leaving. I mean, there's the other speculation that Guilbeault will be gone. Bill Blair is speculated to take on the new position as the High Commissioner with Ralph Goodale retiring. So the speculation from Brian Lilley was that Guilbeault wasn't going to leave until his pension fully vested on October 19th. But I think, which if it's true, oh my goodness, is that ever disgusting? But suffice to say, I think that Carney's got trouble in his cabinet, and I think that what he's trying to do is get rid of the issues. And anyone who can't abide by what he is going to move forward with, I think will be exited. The big issue here is that this should have been done already. Now we're going to have how many? 1, 2, 3 by-elections? Like, that's ridiculous. It's a waste of taxpayer dollars. It's a distraction from the real issues, and I think it puts them in a fairly precarious position with the Conservatives and them taking additional seats from the Liberals. So I don't think this is going to bode well for Carney. I think it will be very difficult for him to maintain that sort of true line on vision, and it's not going to be an easy road for him this fall.
Yeah, like there was a reporter there at Parliament there asking Pierre Poilievre if he would support this budget, and his answer is quite good. He's just like, "What budget?" And she said, "Well, the budget they're going to put forth on November 4th." He said, "Look, well, if you have a copy of it, I'd love to see it, right?" So how do you? But the reporter seemed like like that she wanted to shame him into supporting something that he hasn't even seen. Like, I mean, how? Like his answer should have been like, if there's some red lines that I have, or like what do you think's in that budget that needs my support?
Yeah, and I mean, Polyev is savvy. He is no one's fool. So I mean, you're not going to see him misstep. You're not going to, and you are going to see him take those opportunities. I mean, that was on CBC last night. His response, and I think it's showing just to the strength that he's coming into this house with. Watching the first couple of days of question period, I mean, man, oh man, oh man, this Liberal government was fumbling. They had finally had enough of the immigration questions, and started to have others answer. When you get your House leader to stand up and try and answer the questions for you, it's really a show of weakness. They were just not on their game, and Carney was certainly not on his game, calling and referring to Pierre Poilievre as minister. I mean, that just really amateur gaffes that were not handled super well. So nothing that was catastrophic, but just really shows the roughness and the squeaks that the Liberals have to work out.
They talked about it. We're going to listen to Mark Carney first. Let's listen to the Prime Minister talk about the housing plan here first.
To streamline approvals, Build Canada Homes will greenlight projects in bulk. So instead of developers needing to submit dozens of applications separately, large portfolios of projects will be approved all at once. This is part of our government's broader efforts to cut duplication and reduce costs for Canadians.
And I mean, there's modular group is Brookfield has, I think, about a 36 or 38% share in that group, and it looks like this majority of this is going to be modular homes.
Yeah, this is a mobile home parks, basically. You've got federal land. It's going to be largely unserviced. And then you've got modular homes. I mean, I don't want people to equate modular homes to what they used to be, or mobile home parks to what they used to be. Manufactured homes have come a long way, but they are certainly not super cheap. You're looking at $400 or $500 per square foot. So you're not going to get less expensive homes delivered, which is why for, $13 billion, we're looking at 4,000. I'm very curious to see how the federal government is going to usurp all authority from provinces and from municipalities to bulk approve these applications. Typically these applications have to go through many different ministries through the province, as well as the municipal. Usurping the municipal is fairly easy because most of these are federal lands, but even federal lands are under provincial jurisdiction. So I am not sure what that's going to look like unless they're going to bring in laws that allow them to basically federalize all of the approvals in federal lands. But then how are you integrating with all the provincial infrastructure? So it's not like everything sits right next to Highway Number 1, which is a federal highway. There's a lot of other highways like Highway 97. But I was really disappointed to see that BC was left out of any of those 4,000, those $3.5 million per home homes. We do have some of the highest housing costs in all of Canada, and to see Canada just completely, or to see BC completely ignored in that announcement was a little bit disappointing.
You ever watch that movie, It's a Wonderful Life?
I have.
And what it reminds me of is Mark Carney is Mr. Potter, and you're basically saying these people can live in Pottersville and they can rent, because they probably won't own the land, right? They'll be leasing the land, and then they'll be living in, I think Sean Fraser was standing in front of these boxes that were about 200 square feet each, and you just have to wonder, like, what is this going to look like at the end of the day? As a youngster, I worked on, I think I was 20, working in northern Alberta high level on government housing projects. And I can tell you right then, I was told to do things that, at my age right now, I would have said no way. But we cut a lot of things, cut a lot of shortcuts in what we did there.
Yeah, and they are. I mean, the manufactured homes are quicker to put up. If you look at Lytton as an example, Lytton had two different proposals that went through. One that was on reserve land and that was controlled by Ottawa, and the other one, when the rebuilt, and the other that was actually controlled by the province. And the one that was controlled by the province, literally, I mean, they have the very first few houses that have been up, but the ones controlled by the federal government were actually up years ago and were rebuilt within the first year of the fire. Now, there were a number of reasons for that. The archaeological aspects of the province's lands took way longer than the reserve lands did. But there is a speed that can happen with manufactured homes that doesn't happen with stick-framed homes. The issue is that they're more expensive per square foot, and so typically you get a smaller footprint. Now, will Canadians be happy with that? Look, I think Canadians are happy with anything that they can own. Are these going to be owned? Are these going to be leased? Are these going to be like that? The details are a little bit muddy so far. He does have a fairly high-powered CEO in charge of the Canada Builds Home organization, and she has a tremendous amount of experience on the affordable housing front, coming from Dream Unlimited. But the jury's out in terms of how this is going to be rolled out and how the mechanism will actually function.
Yeah, I always go back to Ronald Reagan. You know what I mean? Like, the government gets involved in industries where the private industry is actually better and more competitive. It typically ends up being a bad thing. Like, we're going to talk about it a little bit later here. They spent this dental care program that they talk about and they brag about all the time. They spent $472 million to administer it for a couple of years, just for the administration. That's not for people enjoying the benefits. That's for the administration of the program.
Absolutely ridiculous. I cannot imagine what that money was spent on and how inefficient you'd have to be in order to spend that amount of money on the number of people that actually benefited from that. So, I mean, that's just another grotesque example of how this government is not good at spending. If we flip back to the housing plan again, I was happy to hear that they are going to be partnering with developers. I was a little bit disappointed to hear that they were only going to be partnering with large projects. That is going to exclude a lot of smaller developers that don't have the capital and outlay to actually move these projects forward. It's going to exclude a lot of smaller construction firms that just don't have the working capital. And so I think you're going to see a lot more hurt in the housing industry as a direct result of some of these bulk buys that are going to go on with the federal government.
Yeah, you would think you would get a lot more done by just giving that money into the industry and saying, here, this is, like coming up with some kind of scheme where it kind of encourages builders to build homes, because then you have a whole bunch of people building homes all across Canada, incentivizing them, and also providing for more of a down payment for a lot of the potential homeowners as well.
Yeah, agreed. And I mean, if you look at, at the administrative costs for the 1.6 million Canadians who are eligible for that dental plan, and I'm flipping back to the dental plan now, but you're looking at $281,000 per person. Yeah. I mean, that is an exorbitant amount.
Crazy. It's absolutely ludicrous, right? And it's just like, that's what I mean. Like, private industry has already been set up to compete, to do things, to be better. And you're putting a government bureaucracy, and we could go on and talk about the wastefulness, and then we're going to talk a little bit about some of that waste here as we go on. But I do want to switch gears. What's that?
Just give them the money to go to the dentist.
No kidding.
Why administer that? Why administer that massive monstrosity of an insurance plan if you could just give them the $140,000 a year to go to the dentist?
Let's switch gears to this Build Canada Now. This is that letter that was sent out about 6 months ago. It was signed by dozens of companies, a lot of energy companies, asking for certainty in the like the slogan that they're running, Build Canada Now, and they're saying simplify the regulation. I mean, that's the big thing, right? We saw in Fort Mac, Tech, which is in the news now, walk away from after spending over $1 billion in the Frontier project because of the regulations. Commit to firm deadlines. This is the other thing that slows people down. It takes 20 years to get a mine into production. Grow production, attract investment. That's one of the biggest things you and I talk about all the time. How do we attract investment? And we got to get rid of those other things. And then, they're talking about incentivizing indigenous areas that, have claimed some of the lands where you get them to be a partner. Like, this letter is being put out again, and then basically they're calling out Carney and saying, like, you need to get going on this. You talk big, so let's have the rubber meet the road here.
Yeah, and I had the privilege of attending a roundtable discussion yesterday with Jerome Gasarli, who's out of the Laurier Institute, and I mean, honestly, it was one of the most damning exposés on the Canadian economy and the BC economy, and just what the impediments that government has put to investment dollars in Canada. And he basically showed 3 different graphs, and in every single graph, it shows Canada against the G7, Canada against the OECD, and Canada against the US in particular. And in every single case, Canada has absolutely bottomed out compared to all of our competitors. And he shows the investment dollars that have left and the reasons why. And the reasons why is that we just have simply too much bureaucracy and too many laws that make it difficult for companies to do business. And the certainty that these companies are calling for is absolutely imperative to start attracting investment dollars back. And you don't get this over a short time frame. And that was one thing that he was really, really critical of, is that these laws need to be in place so that certainty is built over decades, not over 1 or 2 years. So, he talked about Carney's Bill 5, he talked about Bill 7 for BC, and he just said, like, that's politicians tinkering around the edges. We need serious laws that are in place in perpetuity to actually impact and make a difference in investment dollars coming back to Canada.
Attracting money is the big thing. And I was scrolling my Instagram and I pulled it up here and I took a shot of it. And I talked to some other financial planners, and this is the thing. And they're advertising on Instagram now, U.S. immigration via investment, E2, EB5, and the gold card. And they say, come to these seminars, and you don't need to spend $5 million to get Trump's gold card. I think it's $5 million US, but they're outlining something where it's $800,000. You can get in there and you can do a whole bunch of things. And there's a lot of people, because they know that there's a lot of people looking. Otherwise, they wouldn't be running these webinars, right? So that's the thing. We need to figure out a way to attract capital back to Canada.
My kids actually showed me recruiters sending Instagram messages saying, "Do you want to move to Florida? Do you want to move to, Alabama, Arkansas? We've got jobs. We've got, this is the house that you can buy for $400,000. It's these mansions. Do you want to move to Texas? This is what you could afford with, the same job that you have today." So, they're obviously recruiting off of whether it's LinkedIn or whether it's Instagram, and it's scary to see that kind of talent who's seriously considering it because they want to see their dollars go farther.
Yeah, because under I think the old NAFTA, and I think under CUSMA right now, professionals can go. All they need is a job offer, like from an American company. They stop at the border. 15 minutes, they fill out some paperwork, and they can go live in the United States, and they can work on their green card, and they can work, and then their spouse gets special treatment as well to move into like a green card status if you're employed with an American company.
Yeah. Also, business owners, if you start a business, you can get a special visa that allows you, residency down in the U.S. And I know business owners that have done just that. They've started their businesses down in the States and moved part of their portfolio and moving more and more aggressively into the States because, and this is what, a lot of Canadians don't understand. They're like, tax the rich. The rich are already taxed, and we're looking at when an investment is sold, and let's call it, whether it's an apartment building or whether it's your widgets, and when that is sold, or a company is sold, Canadians get taxed at the highest income tax bracket. In the States, they actually, if you reinvest those dollars in the same calendar year into a like business or a like entity, you can avoid paying those taxes. So they are simply making way more money, and also the government is making more money because now they've got that much more money that's making income taxes on a yearly basis. So it's very short-sighted to say, let's just take all of these capital gains and away from those that are wealthy.
Yeah, and I'm not promoting moving to the U.S. And what I'm trying to say is, and I'm sure you are as well, is we need to attract capital to stay here. We need to attract our youth, because there's another guy on, and he's really got a large following, a Canadian guy. He moved to Florida. He was a house flipper, builder, or whatever you want to call it. And he said that, like people say, well, the number one reason you don't want to move to the U.S. because you don't get free healthcare. He said, well, okay, like if you make over $100,000 a year and you have a family, your healthcare, your insurance is going to be about $15,000. But you're going to pay about $30,000 less in tax, or what, I don't know, he had these numbers and he worked them out. And he said, with the $15,000 for healthcare, you're getting top tier instant access to healthcare. Not, you can get your MRI in 9 months, or you can get, you know what I mean? Like, like in Canada right now, it's hard to get, it's free, just can't access it for a lot of people. They don't have family doctors, all kinds of things here.
It's free but rationed.
Yeah, free but rationed. That's a good way to say it. Like if you're desperate. I mean, I did, I think 2 or 3 interviews with a young lady that has a 10-year-old that can't get a liver transplant, and they've given her like 3 months to live. And according to, she doesn't meet this MELD score. She doesn't, so, she's going to time out. So she's looking at options in Mexico or different places, right? So.
Yeah,
sad.
Yeah, it's scary. It's scary. And I'm not advocating for people to move to the U.S. either. I'm advocating for the laws to change to make it more advantageous for investment dollars to come back, and for businesses to attract executives, and for our young talent and creative capital to stay and remain, because we are desperate for them.
Looks like David Eby and Adrian Dix had an epiphany, and they like LNG now. For all of a sudden, they've got that Northwestern port, LNG, talking about how great LNG is. No, not that one. It's, I think, above that. But yeah, so there you go. I mean, great, but
this is how dire the situation is right now for the Eby government. He comes out to do a great. A great announcement, and he's flanked with his ministers and cabinet behind him, and some of the important individuals from the Nisga'a Nation. And honestly, this was the very first question is, why are you spending $450,000 on a comedian for your speeches? He's in trouble, and he's in really bad trouble on a number of fronts right now. That fiscal update came out this week, absolutely damning, and I feel for Minister Bailey. She was on her toes, and probably half of her press conference was just justifying why she put $2.7 billion of a tobacco settlement into this year's fiscal update, because it's being paid over 8 years. And how is that responsible by accounting standards? So, I mean, it could have been way worse. We're looking at the most that we've ever seen in terms of a deficit, and this government is on its heels. They need any win right now, and so they're maybe celebrating this, but it's very disingenuous, because I bet you we could go back in Hansard and find all the speeches that both Dixon and Eby delivered, saying that the fossil fuels should end and we shouldn't have another LNG plant.
Maybe they planted the comedian story, because that's like a bloody sore thumb just sticking out there. But there's a lot of heat that should be on the budget, and all of a sudden this comedian question kind of takes center stage, which is ridiculous. That's absolutely ridiculous how we're spending. That's over a couple of years too, $450,000. But it sure takes a lot of heat. Like they're focusing on like a red herring, when the real focus should be on that budget that just looks atrocious, right? Because there was that $2.7 billion for the tobacco settlement, but also in there's the carbon tax. They're writing that because they didn't have those revenues as a negative. But some of the other ones that really bothered me, personal income taxes dropping, I think, for 3 years in a row. So that shows you the state of British Columbia, right? I mean, that's showing you what they expect to collect from British Columbians, and that is, I mean, it was a dramatic drop off over like the 25 and 26 and 27.
And you and I have talked about this before, that when you tax, at the highest tax brackets, there is a diminishing returns at a certain point. And what they're seeing is they have less high income earners and more lower income earners, and the lower income earners don't pay as much tax. A little known fact is that the top 5% income earners pay almost 80% of taxes. So when you start even seeing 1% of them going to, let's talk about Florida or Arkansas, or just choosing to exit out of BC and go to Alberta, you're talking about a lot of income tax dollars dollars that will fall off, and that's really damaging. Now, the $450,000 seems like a drop in the bucket compared to the 13 billion that we're actually in deficit. But what this does is really points a brighter light and some scrutiny on EB's little communications hub that he has for his office. Rob Shaw comes out and says there's 9 people in the Premier's correspondence branch, plus 6 in his communications division, 5 in the GCPE editorial services, 5 in cabinet priorities, 21 in digital communications, and 5 in writing and content strategy. Like, what? Like, none of those could write the speech? Is it Rob Shaw's question? So, when you have another, comedian that's paid to put content in there.
Who can write jokes? Who can write jokes better than anybody? ChatGPT. Like, come on, right? Come on.
Yeah.
And then we can't get a response half the time. We can't get a response from the NDP and Liberals half the time. Like Stephen Guilbeault, we probably sent 10 letters to, or emails and phone calls, and nothing. The same goes for a lot of the NDP. Like I said, I'm trying to get an interview with the Minister Bailey here, and hopefully that happens. And I've talked to her personally about it, and she promised me an interview. So we shall see, right? But I mean, all these people, and it's not just EB, like even locally here, Interior Health, how many communications people in Interior Health? City of Kelowna, how many communications people? And the level of communication is almost zero, right? Because, and I've talked to the head of Interior Health, and he said, we can't communicate, we're told not to. So then why do we have all those people there? Like, this doesn't make any sense, right? Does it?
Communications people become basically filters or barricades to great communication. I will tip my hat to the City of Kelowna. They have actually a pretty good communication strategy. They tend to be pretty out there on most situations and on most, and it's pretty easy to get a hold of people inside of that organization and get them to come out and speak. So I'll give kudos where kudos are deserved, and definitely say that the City of Kelowna is pretty good in terms of standards. I would say the rest of them are not. It's very difficult. Transparency is lacking. They're not good, in terms of response times, and they become really gatekeepers rather than transparency providers.
Yeah, but if you think, I think it's about a 100-page document, Brenda Bailey's update there, the minister's update. If you sift through that, it'll probably just make you nauseous, right? It's just, the theme of the show is, why are things not better with all this record spending, right? Like record deficits. Selena Robinson came out too, and just and she was critical of it as well. And where's better, and including federally and provincially, where are things better, the things that matter? Crime, housing, healthcare. Point to better. The story yesterday, food banks give Canada a failing grade. 25% of people accessing the food bank. 89% of Canadians, we did the story a couple of days ago, 89% of Canadians are $200 away from meeting their monthly obligations. That's 89%. 89%. Yeah. That's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. Gaslighting us on the carbon tax for how long? Now all of a sudden taking credit for the carbon tax. And, segue into that, British Columbians seeing some relief at the pump there. A friend of mine from Grand Forks texted me yesterday, said, Jim, gas in Grand Forks, $1.17. I was just like, what? Are you serious? And turns out Grand Forks was the epicenter of cheap gas yesterday in British Columbia. And I think it was $1.33 here at the Costco. So gas prices down in BC. And apparently we did the story, you can go on there, we talked to the people at Gas Buddy. Sounds like we might even see more relief at the pumps as we move along into the winter. Sounds like that Washington refinery was offline, back online now. And supposedly the winter mix is a little cheaper, so you might be able to drive that F-150 after all.
Well, and what I'll say is that the government was wrong on this one. The government said that if they removed carbon tax, that the gas companies would just gobble it up. That simply wasn't true, because where you didn't have carbon tax, or where you saw, didn't have provincial taxes, gas prices were lower. So, the margin is the margin, and gas providers are charging that margin, but we are seeing it lower, and that is helping to lower inflation. Unfortunately, BC is still one of the highest, in the inflation inflation across Canada, and largely because we still do have a lot of provincial taxes, a lot of provincial regulations on our fuels that increase the cost with renewable requirement, et cetera. And I mean, until some of those regulations are removed, we're going to continue to see higher gas prices than the rest of Canada.
Here's some political advice. Francois Philippe Champagne talking about how Canadians got that $70 a month. Well, they talk about it in a different way, but the $70 family tax break. He said it was a raise. Well, I mean, it's not a raise when they just take less. That's not a raise. It's your money. But Canadians don't see that. You know what I mean? You don't really see that. But you see it at the pump. Like, my buddy was super excited. He said, like, I filled up my truck first time in years where it was under $100, $83 to fill up his F-150. And he said he couldn't believe it. So they see that, and that's that's $30 each time. And some people are filling it up once a week and stuff like that. They work and they fill it up more. They see that immediately, right? They see that immediately. Drive down the cost of energy. You and I talk about it all the time. Energy is everything. Energy is everything, and that's what costs us so much because you got to get to the job site. Especially companies. They think of all the gas and the diesel that's burnt, and to do work and all that, and especially if you're just driving your kids, you live in rural communities like Grand Forks. Good on Grand Forks for having the cheapest gas in BC, though, right?
And it affects the entire supply chain. It affects everything from the individual workers trying to get to their jobs. It affects the semi trucks that are trying to get the goods away from the manufacturing plants and into distributors. It affects from the distributors to the retailers. Like, everything is affected by the price of energy. And we say you often say energy is everything. I will also say cheap energy is prosperity. It equals prosperity. The cheaper your energy costs, the more prosperous a nation. And I would challenge anyone to find me a nation where they do not have cheap energy and they are prosperous.
Yeah, billionaire Chamath there said it in Toronto, along with the Shopify CEO, and said you can take that formula, energy plus the cost of energy equals productivity, right? Because it really comes down to that, right? So if you have energy, you can produce more things. And again, even for the consumer, that's the voter that feels it at the pump. They feel it at the pump. They feel it in their heating, their fuel costs. And good on, I think Fortis came out and said they're not going to raise the natural gas prices to the end of the year, which is great. They should start dropping these prices. And I think energy is so important to so many people. And you, as a home builder, you would have got lots of stuff shipped to you. And at the bottom of all those invoices used to be carbon tax. A line, delivery, all the freight, everything. And then they put a line in at the bottom there and they charged you an additional carbon tax, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. No, it definitely goes to the bottom line. I think the other interesting statistic that came out this last week was that over 80% of Canadians want choice when it comes to how they heat and fuel their homes. So they are wanting the return of natural gas and these step codes that have really eliminated the use of natural gas in buildings, I think is short-sighted. And I think we need to get back to allowing choice and allowing the most efficient use of fuels for people and individuals to heat and cool their homes.
I have solar on my roof, and I had a heat pump, and I probably put it in 8 years ago or something like that. And every year when I went to start it up, like when you turn the air conditioner on in the summer, because it didn't run, because I have a furnace, I have the heat pump furnace kind of combo, and it had more difficulty each year. Like, I'd have to flip the breaker 6 times, and the guy came out there and he said, yeah, what happens is they don't run in the winter, and then you come summer when you're using your air conditioner, the valve is seized, and he tried to boost it, and he said, it's done. He said, I wouldn't put a heat pump in. That's what he told me. He said, I would put your traditional air conditioner back in, run your natural gas, and you got your solar going on. And he said, but he said they just don't work here. I mean, whether he was wrong or not, I don't know, but I ended up putting an air conditioner back in as opposed to a heat pump.
Yeah, and I would say that heat pumps work really well in moderate temperatures where there is very little fluctuation. They do not work well in any sort of extreme or any sort of where there's not even extremely low or extremely high, but where there's a difficult variation between day and night or between, from day to day. They just simply don't work well. So anywhere that is outside of really the Lower Mainland or Victoria, is not well warranted. And in fact, when the Canadian government was giving rebates on heat pumps, they actually had an asterisk and a disclaimer that said these should not be used in any climates that reach lower than -20 or have the ability to reach lower than -20, because you can freeze to death, right? So, that's where, it's a great idea theoretically, but in the end, it really doesn't work.
I think you said it best there. Choice on an EV, choice on how you heat your home, choice. And it's come down to choice, right? Like this is nonsense. Bank of Canada cut today, which is a bit of a relief, but I was screaming for more. I think they should have just went down to 2 and kind of like juiced this market, kind of like, because there's not a lot of confidence in this housing market right now. So I think they need to do more. Doug Ford come out too, and he said they need to do more. Again, the elevator up and the staircase down. I know they're trying to be prudent, but I heard Carney today talking about, and this is just complete gaslighting. He's like, we lowered the interest rates and the Americans have a higher interest rate than ours. Just like, yeah, our dollar is 72 cents, buddy.
Yeah.
Like, come on.
Yeah, there's a lot that we are not doing right now. Like our economy is worse and our dollar is.
For the most part, the Canadian government has tried to keep our dollar down because we were an export nation, and obviously a weaker dollar. A lot of countries tried to devalue their currency against the Americans so that we can export more goods. So you're paying Canadians in lower cost things and selling in U.S. dollars. Obviously, very beneficial, right? Not so great if you're paying Canadian dollars but also selling in Canadian dollars. That's kind of your situation, right? Like, but if you're an exporter, it's great if you have a low Canadian dollar, right? Because you get to pay your workers at, like a 25% discount and then export and take the American dollar.
Yeah, just, this is not going to affect housing in any great detail. We saw the Politicos come out in full force, basically saying, this is not the silver bullet that the housing industry is looking for. This is not going to, suddenly stimulate and bring thousands of buyers back into the fold. It's already baked into, some of the markets, and, it was widely anticipated. So, it's going to affect the variable. It's not going to affect the 5-year, which is really dependent on the bond yield. So I don't see this making any meaningful difference in the housing industry or giving that level of confidence. And, like we talked about last week, the housing industry is not just about houses and sales. This is also about jobs and all of those that are employed by the construction industry.
Certainly.
And we're seeing huge losses in that area, and that's pretty scary right now for individuals.
Yeah, it's the certainty that the investors need. Number one, they need some certainty in what's going on in Canada's fiscal situation, but it's hard to hide. And we're going to show you a graph here in a bit, and I'm sure you've seen it. The 89% of Canadians that are $200 away from making their monthly obligations, that you can't hide that. The 25% that are at the food bank, like in the access to healthcare, the amount of crime, and then Sean Fraser gaslighting, Canadians again and saying, there's already strong bail reform, and then even Robin Erbach from the Globe and Mail said no, you guys did this, and then they want to do this Online Harms Act first before they tackle crime, which blows me away. Is that, wow, that's a priority, but. I just don't. Let's put this graph up here, and you're going to see this, and you probably have seen this already. Yeah, there you go. What happened around then? Just curious. Around 2015, something happened to the two diverging economies, because everything else is the same. There's COVID. The two economies are basically pegged to each other, and then all of a sudden, it's policy. It was basically the suppression of our biggest strength, and that's our natural resources. The suppression of our natural resources is right there, and it shows you we had a climate-driven liberal government, which is now throwing it away basically, because now LNG is obviously the rage, and and it's just crazy. 20 years to permit a mine, and then so we're even tech right now. I mean, tech getting taken out by Anglo-American. Tech is one of Canada's last big companies. I don't know if you remember, Barrick Gold used to be Canada's, you know what I mean? All of these guys have left, including Brookfield. Brookfield has gone to the U.S. for the access to capital markets. What do we have left? Suncor? Can you think of another big resource company that's still Canadian? Like Suncor. And Suncor has been facing heat forever. And they try to keep their head down, try not to get in the news, right? Because they've been attacked forever. Yeah. But Teck, that really hurt Teck. Teck is one of Canada's, like most prominent companies. You can look at the stock chart of Teck.
Yeah.
Frontier, they put $1 billion into that thing and walked away from it.
Well, and what this chart shows is a little bit more damning than even what you might think on initial glance, because what this actually shows is a real meaning or reason why Canada's productivity numbers are so low. This is an implosion of our manufacturing and our industrial sector. And this means like the reinvestment just isn't happening. We don't have, the newest and the greatest tools. We're not investing into our corporate structures, which is why, our dollar isn't going as far and people aren't getting paid enough. And we literally are having this, this real, existential moment in the cost of living. So I think we need to, this graph is everywhere right now. If you haven't seen it, you're probably not on social media because it certainly has been populated around. And I think it's probably one of the most damning, graphs that I've seen in a very long time.
That's the only one you need to use when they gaslight you and tell you the strongest G7 nation in the world. Put the graph down and say, explain it to me. Explain it to me. Explain this to me. Well, and then tell me how liberal policy, you've had the wheel for the past now 11 years. You've had the wheel, and this is the result of you steering the car.
But what they would say is, no. That was the last government. Our government is going to build the strongest economy in the G7. Right. And I would say to that, no, you had 10 years already, and this should have been an easy fix for you guys. And instead, you're spinning wheels and tinkering around the edges.
Well, again, Mark Carney was the economic advisor to Canada for about the past 5 years as well. So that's not a lot of economic advisement there, is there? No. That I can see. And I put it on my LinkedIn as well. Just if you go look at it, gold. Canada, the only G7 nation not to hold any gold in reserve. The only one. The only one. And then when we sold out the last, Mark Carney was part of that as Bank of Canada governor when we were selling our gold. And I'm not saying he was the only one there. And then they decided, but a lot of central banks were selling gold up to about 2010. A lot of central banks were bailing on gold. They said it was antiquated. But most turned it around after that. They said, you know what, gold matters. And in the last little while, gold has been added, except Canada didn't get the memo. Canada did not get the memo, even though we're a gold-rich resource nation. Canada didn't get the memo. And where do you think most of our reserve assets are? The U.S. dollar. The U.S. dollar, U.S. T-bills. And the U.S. dollar index for the past 3 years has been going down. And it's also the one that they attack all the time. So this is where most of our reserve assets are. And yet the Liberal government continues to attack the Americans. It's like you're attacking your own investment. It's just weird.
Yeah. And, yesterday was Jerome Gasaroli. One of the critiques he had was that Canada has lagged on any of where we should be, any of the good ideas, and so you said we didn't get the memo. We didn't get the memo on gold, we didn't get the memo on LNG, we didn't get the memo on gas, we didn't get the memo. Like, there's so many things on mining. Like, why are we not really moving all of these aspects forward? Like, it is absurd and bizarre to me that we can't actually have a more fast-tracked and monumental turnaround. And I will say, and I know I said this earlier in the year, it can happen. And the last time we saw this happen was in the late 90s with Jean Chrétien and that headline that said the Canadian peso. And it was a very damning expose on how bad our economy was during that time. And, Chrétien rallied all of the different premiers. Every stripe was present, whether it was Liberal, NDP, or Conservative. And they all came together and really tried to get this one for all and all for one economic rejuvenation. And they were successful. And I would say it was within 2 years that they had completely turned around the Canadian economy. So it can happen. But do I see that kind of rallying cry from Carney? Do I see that kind of statesmanship from Carney? I just don't see it yet, and I'm desperate to, because we need a big turnaround of that nature again.
If we would have held on to our gold today, it'd be worth $118 billion US. We could use it right now, right about now. $118 billion. Just bad decisions, and just poor decisions. And again, to have most of our assets in USD, while we try to poke sticks in the eye of a country until it's that anyway. It just.
And to a country that's become hostile to us, right? We don't have control over that. We have control over gold. You can, gold is not politically motivated, whereas the U.S. is.
And we don't like Bitcoin either. We don't like the new asset either, right? It's just wild, right? It's just absolutely wild. Doug Ford going to get into a fight, I think, with Joe Lee and Scott Moe here, because Scott Moe wants those EV tariffs off. Doug Ford knows if he takes it off, that's going to end that auto sector. So it's almost like checkmate too again, right? Because here we protect the auto sector at all costs, let in the cheap EVs, then we got this EV push, you know what I mean? Because they're fighting on two ends of the stick. It's not unusual for the Liberals to be in this predicament because they've done really bad policy.
But I would disagree. I would disagree that taking the EV mandate off or EV tariffs off is going to affect negatively. I think that the ship has already sailed. I think we're already seeing the negative effects. That EV industry is not what is propping up Ontario. The car manufacturing is. The less bureaucracy that we can put around the car manufacturing industry, the stronger it will be. And right now we're literally just spinning our tires, and I think the impact to the canola and legumes is way greater than the impact to the manufacturing sector right now, and is speculated to be. So I think we need to do a really good business case and show why. And I think that if the government had done that, it would be pretty easy for us to see a way forward.
Chrystia Freeland is going to get a job as the new special envoy for reconstruction of Ukraine. And my question, when I read that, I'm just like, aren't they still fighting in a war? What are we reconstructing? Are we building things so that they can bomb tomorrow? It's early. But the bigger problem is we just committed $4 billion for the reconstruction. But they also didn't want to say what for. So here we're going to have no scrutiny over how it's spent. And here Chrystia Freeland's going to manage I guess.
This is a nothing sandwich. This is a nothing job. This is a way to silence her, not have a by-election, and get her out of cabinet. Clearly, there's been some sort of friction. And again, I'll go back to Carney's got trouble in his cabinet. And when you've got three ministers that are all speculated to leave, Guilbeault and Bill Blair and Chrystia Freeland, and these have been speculated since the summertime. There was already, trouble in the water. I think that this does not bode well for Carney, and I think he's going to have a difficult time getting around these positions and just giving them really. And this isn't even a diplomatic position. We already have a diplomat that is our ambassador. So what she's doing and how she's doing it, I think is a nothing. And I think, she'll just wait out until she gets another cush job, from outside of government, and then we'll see her bolt as well.
We had a couple other stories, but we did talk about the dental plan already. $472 million to administer that. That's just abysmal. And Holly Doan of Blacklocks, they highlight so many of these stories, and she put out a tweet there the other day that said, if reporters spent more time just digging through FOIs instead of standing there and doing these parliamentary gallery things and then pumping the tires of the Liberals, maybe we get some more accountability here. But no, they just rather spend their time just doing Liberal talking points and not to the benefit of Canadians here. But that's just atrocious. That is absolutely crazy. $472 million.
Atrocious waste of money. And whether it's the green slush fund, whether it's this $470 million, whether it's the RiveCan app, I mean this government has been riddled with bad decisions, bad management of its funds. And when we have deficits as high as they are, this level of incompetence is just unacceptable.
And we'll end off with the big one, the big pomp and ceremony. Nobody does pomp and ceremony like the Brits. And then King Charles welcoming Donald J. Trump to Westminster there. And wow, I mean, they put on a show. And that's, like one of the bigger shows for another leader. I mean, typically they save that stuff for royalty, not for, Trump got like one of the biggest welcomes that I've seen for a leader of another country. We sure don't get that when we show up there, right?
Oh, no, we don't. No, we don't. It's kind of like a back room sort of a thing when we come. And, I would say that isn't this Trump's third visit?
I think it's his second. I think it's his second visit.
I thought it was his third because one of them was kind of a vacation slash.
Maybe, yeah. But yeah, so Prince William and Kate greeted as he got off Marine One there, and then brought him to the King. But Melania Trump, I mean, fashion. Melania Trump, very fashionable as well as Kate, right? They got the hats, and Camilla there, you know what I mean? But I think they broke some traditions. Trump walked ahead of King Charles even as they, they toured the troops and all that, and. Trump's his own man, and it really does show you where the power in the world is. I think most people recognize, most people that have some common sense, that the American might is very strong, and the military is very strong, and getting the recognition. I'm sure a lot of people are losing their minds over that royal welcome there, but yeah. So meeting with King Charles and the Queen. And then off to, I think he's going to meet with Keir Starmer and try to refine that trade deal with the UK as well.
Yeah, and Trump is in a power position, and he has been. I mean, he's thrown his weight around with the tariffs. He's thrown his weight around with his military. He's thrown his weight around with further military spending. Yeah, they are definitely a force to be reckoned with. Is this a show of respect for that? Perhaps. Is this just another opportunity for them to put some pomp and ceremony and reinforce, the power of the king? Perhaps. But regardless, I think it does show just how much more respect is garnered by the U.S. president than when our own prime minister attended as well.
Yeah, and I think I can't remember. Ian told me this morning the Arrows, the crack military fighter jet team there. They swooped over Westminster there with the red, white, and blue, the smoke. They played the Star Spangled Banner and all that. There was a big protest, and when we went into the protest that Tommy Robinson organized, and I was going to highlight some of the media stuff. So Tommy Robinson organized a protest there in London. And there's discussion between the media saying a few thousand to Tommy Robinson claiming 3 million. Somewhere in there is the real number. Lots though, right? They ran a helicopter overhead and showed you all the people. There was a lot of people out there, and Elon Musk spoke at the event. And but the embarrassment though is the Canadian media, because they said, CTV and them said, far-right extremist Tommy Robinson holds rally in the UK. Without the quotation marks, without attributing to anybody. So far-right, they know, the media knows that it's attributed to fascism and attributed to Hitler. This is part of the rhetoric that led to the Charlie Kirk stuff. And they don't put the quotation marks around or anything. And so they know what they're doing, and they willingly do it. And if you I put a really good post on LinkedIn as well to define what fascism is, right? These people are not fascists, right? But it's the rhetoric that's used, because it's the hate symbol, because that's the hate symbol that they use. Kamala Harris used it as well, calling Donald Trump a fascist. I mean, these people are not fascists, right? You can call them whatever you want, but they're not fascists if you know what the definition of fascism is. And but then there was a CTV tweet, I think it was today, and then it was something, Trump accusing people in the far left. But then they put the quotation marks around them, just they just embarrass themselves over and over and over again.
Yeah, I fully agree.
That's all we have for today. But lots going on in the world, and again, the big question that you should ask yourself, with all this record spending in the federal government and in BC, is it actually making things better?
Yeah, is it making a difference in my life?
Right. The bigger difference is at the pump. I'm telling my buddy in Grand Forks that he felt that right now. Anyway, as always, Renee, thank you very much, and we'll see you next week on Beyond the Ballot.